Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman with Juan Gonzalez. Our guests are Brian Jones, an elementary school teacher in Harlem for 8 years, also an actor, and Diane Ravitch, Assistant Secretary of Education. We welcome you both back to Democracy Now!, Juan.
Well, Diane Ravitch, I want to ask you about the business side of all of this education reform, not only in terms of the testing companies, but increasingly the new wave of reform now is the question of online learning. The school's chancellor of New York City, Joel Klein, resigned to go work for Rupert Murdoch in a company that Rupert Murdoch bought that's going to specialize in basically replacing the teacher in the classroom with online learning. Could you talk about that?
Sure. There is a narrative. You can read about it in Chubb and Moe's most recent book called Liberating Learning, where they imagine online learning replacing teachers, where there's a teacher somewhere, let's say in a barn in Kansas, monitoring 100 or 200 computer screens 24/7, I recall that Chancellor Klein said at the time we could reduce our teaching staff by 30% if we could have more online learning. New York is now investing, I forget how many hundreds of millions of dollars in IT contracts, technology contracts, because they see online learning as the future. I can tell you, because I reviewed the research just last night because I was having a Twitter debate with someone, there's no research behind this. They say we don't have any evidence that we have. Personally, I believe that children need teachers. They need an adult, a grown-up. They need the interaction with other students to talk about things, to debate, to discuss. What I've heard from many people is children sitting at home on a computer, interacting with a blinking screen. All they're doing is answering questions, and frankly, you don't know who answered the questions. If they submit an essay, you don't know who wrote the essay. But we have states like Florida now mandating online courses, state of Utah, where the state superintendent ran for office with huge contributions from online companies, is mandating online learning. Rupert Murdoch gave a speech not long ago when he bought this company, Wireless Generation. He bought it for $360 million, and he said at that time, this is a $500 billion industry, and we want to be the leader in that industry. So there is a lot of money in play here, and no evidence that it's going to improve kids' education. And, my view is the poor will get computers. The rich will get computers and teachers.
Talking about big business and the tests.
Right. And the testing industry itself is a multi-billion-dollar industry that has grown and fattened over the past decade. Pearson, for example, McGraw-Hill, the two big ones. Pearson has a $500 million contract with the state of Texas, another, I forget how many hundreds of millions with Florida. Now they've just taken the New York contract. This is a multi-billion-dollar enterprise. So it will be very difficult to back away from what we're locked into now, the kind of intellectual wasteland of so many of our public schools, because there is big business in keeping it this way.
And if you publish the test, then the school is, they would be suicidal not to purchase the test preparation materials made by the same company that makes the test. So think about all those disposable workbooks that you have to then buy every year in huge quantities for every student.
Brian, you were heavily involved with this film, The Inconvenient Truth Behind Waiting for Superman. Right. Clearly, Waiting for Superman had a major impact across the country in terms of this debate, and was very much promoted by some of the television networks as well. Why did you get involved in that, and what were you trying to do with the counter documentary?
Well, this film was made, Inconvenient Truth Behind Waiting for Superman, was made by a group called the Grassroots Education Movement, and we just felt that the film, having seen it, was so outrageous and so full of lies and slander and so slanted. Before we even had done the homework of figuring out who was really behind it and who had funded it and all of that, just on its face value. But the other thing about the film is it was so effective. It was such a well-made film. It really takes you in. It's artfully done, beautifully made film. So we thought, well, we might have some idea how to use iMovie, and maybe we can make our own film.
Who funded Waiting for Superman?
Oh, well, it's funded by all of the same forces that it's the same names that have lined up again and again. It's actually escaping my mind at the moment. Do you remember?
Well, I can tell you that the two major producers, the two major producers were Participant Media, whose CEO was previously the CEO of a for-profit chain of post-secondary institutions, vocational schools, for-profit, and the other company, Walden Media, is headed by a very conservative billionaire named Philip Anschutz, who contributes to the Discovery Institute, which is against evolution, and to all the right-wing think tanks that advocate for privatization and vouchers.
Democracy Now's Jessel Noor spoke with author Lois Weiner about teacher unions. She's the author of The Global Assault on Teaching Teachers and Their Unions. I wanted to play a clip from that interview.
Unlike school boards, unions are membership organizations, and we can't just blame union leaders. We have to understand that the issue here is that teachers don't see the unions as vehicles for struggle, and I think that if that doesn't happen, we really are going to see the destruction of public education in this country.
That's Lois Weiner. Brian Jones talked about the relationship between teachers and unions.
Well, I think right now what we've seen is that teachers need to be more active in their unions. There needs to be a movement of ordinary teachers to challenge what we see, because we're the ones who see it happening in the classroom. I think we need to unite with parents and try to build a kind of social justice unionism that takes on not only questions of our working conditions, which are learning conditions, but also questions of curriculum and pedagogy. The group I'm a part of, the Grassroots Education Movement, gemnyc.org, is trying to do just that right here in New York.
We have 10 seconds. Can you address the issue of unions and teachers?
Well, to me, the big issue today is there's a narrative that says teachers are the problem in American education. I have been arguing poverty is the problem. We tie right into your segment on Dr. King. Poverty is the problem. 35% of black kids live in poverty. 20% of all American kids live in poverty. That's the problem.
Diane Ravitch, Brian Jones, thanks so much for being with us. That does it for the show. Democracy Now!, democracynow.org.